China is using Saudi Arabia and Iran to become a superpower. Analysts perceive China's efforts to broker an agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia as broader symptoms of a changing global order, and they attribute these changes to China's involvement. Saudi Arabia and Iran reached an agreement at discussions held in Beijing on Friday to re-establish diplomatic relations and reopen their respective embassies within the next 2 months. In addition, one of the stipulations of the agreement stated that the respect for the sovereignty of states and the non-interference in the internal affairs of states would be upheld. Iranian state media published photographs and footage of Ali Shamkhani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, shaking hands with Musaad bin Mohammed al-Aiban, Saudi Arabia's national security advisor, as Wang Yi, China's most senior diplomat, stood in between them. Before the revelation, China's position as a mediator in addressing long-standing conflicts that have been ongoing between the regional adversaries had not been made public. According to reports, Wang stated that China will continue to act responsibly as a large nation by playing a constructive role in the management of trouble spots and demonstrating accountability. He went on to say that China has lived up to its role as a good faith and reliable mediator by carrying out its responsibilities as a host for conversation. Low risk, high reward for China, as the saying goes. The two Gulf countries terminated their connections in 2016 after Saudi Arabia executed a prominent Shia Muslim scholar, which sparked demonstrations in Iran and led to attacks on the Saudi embassy in Tehran by demonstrators. Both parties have actively participated in proxy wars and fought on opposing sides in a variety of crisis zones around the Middle East. Tehran is providing backing to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, where the conflict is now well into its 8th year, while Riyadh is leading a military coalition that is fighting in support of the Yemeni government. Since the year 2021, authorities from both Iraq and Oman have engaged in discussions with one another, but no agreements have been achieved. According to Robert Mogilnicki, a senior resident scholar at the Arab Gulf State Institute in Washington, D.C., the mediated transaction is indicative of China's rising presence in the region, as well as its heightened desire in playing a role there. He made this statement to Al Jazeera: "China is in a good position to broker an agreement because the United States does not have good relations with Iran," he said. According to Mogilnicki, it is a relatively low-risk activity for China to engage in because the Chinese are not committed to any particular outcome. This makes the activity relatively high reward. Better diplomatic linkages between Saudi Arabia and Iran will reduce the likelihood of regional conflict and will also reduce tensions in the region. That is a positive development for China, the United States, and other actors in the region as well. Sina Tusi, a non-resident senior scholar at the Center for International Policy in Washington, D.C., told Al Jazeera that China has a clear interest in improving connections and security in the region because the Gulf is a crucial source of energy for Beijing, which buys energy from Iran and Saudi Arabia. Tusi stated that China has a clear interest in improving ties and stability in the region because the Gulf is a vital source of energy for Beijing. When oil facilities in Saudi Arabia were attacked by the Houthis in 2019, it had a temporary impact on the country's oil output. As a result, global oil prices increased by more than 14% throughout the weekend, marking the largest increase in price in more than a decade. Tusi stated that this was the worst-case scenario for China, in which a conflict in the Persian Gulf would impact China's economic interests and energy supply. The United States increasingly has deviated from and increasingly pursued policies that simply make it impossible for it to be a credible mediator, according to comments made by Trita Parsi, Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute. According to Parsi, the fact that the United States is increasingly taking sides in regional crises and becoming a co-belligerent in regional wars makes it extremely challenging for the United States to play a part in the process of bringing about peace. China did not take a side between Saudi Arabia and Iran and has worked very hard to avoid getting dragged into their conflict. As a result, China may be in a position to play a role in mediating peace between the two countries. The breakthrough in China comes at a time when multiple media sites in the United States have stated that Israel and Iran are inching closer to war this week. Tusi stated that even though China maintains extensive political and economic ties with Israel, the United States has historically been giving support to Israel and Saudi Arabia against Iran, and as a result, it has not been able to play that mediator role. I think this is a wider sign of the changing global order and how the period of America being the unchallenged global superpower, especially after the Cold War, that period is ending, Tusi added. I think this is a broader sign of the changing global order and how the period of America being the unchallenged global superpower. For nations such as Saudi Arabia throughout the past few decades, the United States was the only feasible partner. These nations now have different choices available to them. Both China and Russia are in a position to provide them with significant assistance in the areas of economics, politics, and the military, respectively. It is to their advantage to coexist with Iran, and Iran is not going anywhere, so coexistence with Iran is in their best interest. If the United States is not going to give them unconditional support for what I think Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman originally wanted against Iran, which was a very confrontational policy that they are willing to come to terms with Iran and coexist, which is, I think, the direction they are seemingly going in, Tusi said. If the United States is not going to give them unconditional support, they are willing to come to terms with Iran and coexist. According to Parsi, after the attack on the oil field in Saudi Arabia, the United States government, which was led at the time by former President Donald Trump, made it quite plain that it would not get involved in a conflict either with or for the Middle East. After that, the government of Joe Biden attempted to rectify the situation by sending signals that it will stand by its regional friends. They did so in the belief that this alliance would prove to be useful in their struggle with China. However, according to Parsi, the United States has further entangled itself in the conflict of these countries and made it more difficult for itself to be a mediator, and China has taken advantage of this. China has taken advantage of this situation since the United States has moved closer to both Israel and Saudi Arabia. Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen have all been affected by Iran and Saudi Arabia's proxy wars in the region, which have been going on for decades. Tusi stated that there is now an opportunity for increased and sustained dialogue that could help bridge these differences, even though the already normalized relations between the two are not going to instantly fix their massive geopolitical disagreements. Did you like it? Tell us what you think of the video in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting videos.